Welcome back, folks. Today we have a new guest, and her name is Dandan. She has been in headhunting for past 10 years, and she has her own companies as well. She is a great entrepreneur, a real estate agent, as well as she has been giving us the best piece of advice, that is to take risk, switch, pivot, do everything to find out your niche and do the things that feels like play to you but looks like work to others is her greatest advice. Let's move in and find out more.
Sounds great. Yeah. So I had a very typical sort of immigrant child upbringing when my parents moved to the US when I was 5. And I was always told my whole life that I should become a doctor, a lawyer, a scientist, an accountant, the basic jobs that I think a lot of Asian parents and immigrant parents that come from foreign countries that come to the US or whatever country they're immigrating to, they want the best for their children. They want the child to do what they want. But after college, I really understood myself to a point where I knew that I would actually not be qualified or capable or even interested in pursuing a traditional career route, which kind of led me to think about what do the rich people do? How do they get rich? And a lot of wealthy people write books and they're motivational speakers and they share, how did they get there? And a lot of these people, they're in sales role. They are selling something. And
Right.
because they can sell something and sell a lot of it, they then get a foundation, a financial foundation, and an accelerated earning capability that's much faster than the traditional route, which also might require a long money and time investment up front. For instance, law, for instance, becoming a doctor. You need 3 to 8 years of schooling and additional apprenticeship before you can even really be a business leader, which I think if you live in the US, it's such a capitalist, entrepreneurial, world. And I argue this is the case for every single country now, is capitalism is the model, right? So if you can create something and if you can sell something, you will be richer much faster. So instead of going to grad school, I disagreed with my parents very aggressively and they were very upset. And I said, I'm going to go and do some random sales job. And so I landed into recruitment, which is agency recruitment specifically. And it is a type of recruiter, but it isn't what the general public knows more about, which is like HR. We're not really HR people. We are salespeople selling talent to organizations, and organizations pay us a very expensive recruitment fee to get this highly specialized talent, headhunting them to move from one company to our clients, right? So as simple as this sounds, it's actually really hard to do and it pays extremely well. So by the time I was 25 years old, I was earning over $215,000 a year, which is a lot of money for a person who is relatively young. And that set me up because my first year I made $87,000. My second year I made $130,000. Meanwhile, the whole time I'm house hacking. I'm also like not paying full rent because I have tenants. I get these leases and I rent every single room. And I got that because I bought the lease from my old roommate, right? So all these little things I was doing was helping me decrease my cost of living drastically. So we go to bars and I would literally just drink water. I would literally, I'm not paying $15 for a cocktail. I'm going to drink water. So we would be at a club all night and I would just be drinking water because I was like, I refuse to pay, right? Like I'm saving every single cent that I wanted to save. And I still went on travel. I still traveled, but I didn't live in like 5-star hotels. I would live in a hostel, and I did this for many, many, many years. So I'm accumulating wealth and I invested it into real estate when I was 25, 26 was when I started investing into real estate and owning property. And then that set me up to achieve financial independence relatively early because the cost of the homes, really rose very quickly. I made some very good bets. And then I went independent when I was 28. I quit the workforce and I just traveled, was a full time landlord, buying and selling homes, managing tenants, doing evictions. Unfortunately, I was investing in a lot of areas that were not very stable. And I was a new landlord, so learning a lot of mistakes. And then I started my own recruiting company 2 years after that when I was 30 years old. And now I have my recruitment business, I have my real estate property, Most of these properties are Airbnbs now. That's where I'm heavily investing my money is in hosting Airbnbs. And so far, so good. And one hand feeds the other, recruitment and real estate. That's pretty much my life now.
Exciting journey, Dandan, exciting journey. Can you just tell me that how did you transition from real estate to headhunting, recruiting part? Because at the start you were doing a different thing, then you came into entrepreneurial journey, and then you shifted to real estate, and then you came back to recruiting and finding top talents and feeding it to the top companies on the planet. So how did the transition go? What was your inspiration at that point? And I believe that your journey made it sound really good because what you were doing is not spending money. You were trying to invest money early on, and you were trying to save money, not to save, but to invest it in real estate and not to put it here and there, but you were trying to gain experience out of it. So can you just tell us about that journey because it sounds really exciting to hear.
Yeah, my first 5 years of my career, when I was 23 years old to 28 years old, I was a headhunter working at a large recruitment agency. So they were paying me my salary. I was giving them my profits. So they were taking their cut. So I would make them, half a million. I would only get 200. I would bill 740,000, for instance. The company would get to profit off of me $500,000 pure revenue. That's recruiting is very low expenses. You don't have to like really do anything. You just call people. It's a sales job, right? So it's not like I have to buy a factory and build products and sell products. Recruitment is just cashing in these massive fees, per placement. So the company is making half a million off of me. I'm taking $215,000, which is very good. And then when I got older, my last year as a recruiter, I took home about $200,000. I didn't work very hard. At that point, I was doing really big deals. So I was maximizing on the commission rate. So that year I made the company about like 550 or 600,000 total. And I got about a third of that. So the company got to keep like 400,000 off of me. I got to keep 200,000. So because my job is me, I'm doing everything. I'm calling the clients, I'm getting them interested, I'm selling them my services, me, and then I'm filling the jobs myself. I'm going to get the candidates. So it's me doing everything. The firm is doing really nothing. Like their marketing is very weak. They're not doing much marketing. I have to do all the work. I have to go and tell people. I have to call people. I have to send them email mailers that I'm creating. The company does nothing to help me do deals, right? I'm the one going to sell and doing it very manually. So what happened was when I was finishing up, I was buying another condo and I thought to myself, I'm sitting on like half a million worth of real estate. At that point, one of my condos jumped up and another one, I knew I was making like 100 grand. I knew I was buying it at such a low rate and I was getting rental income. I was like, I'm 28 years old. I have no health issues. I have zero cost of living because I'm house hacking. I literally pay nothing in rent or close to nothing, like $100, something like that. I have no real cost other than my car insurance, and like my properties. My tenants are paying for it. So I have no cost. If I don't start my own company now, when am I going to do it? Right? I have no kids. I have no dependents. My parents don't need me to pay for them. So if I do not become an entrepreneur, this would be a bad decision. So I left a $200,000 paying job with no plan, zero plan. Like I was like, I'm quitting just for the theory of it. I should not work here because I'm doing all the work. It's not like I'm getting something from the company. Like if I'm going to do all the work and I can generate this company, five to $700,000 a year, I can do that for myself. I can do half of that and make 300,000. Right? I could do half the work and make more than what I was doing as an employee, and that's the benefit of being in a sales role. Only in a sales role could that really happen, right? Like, because you don't need colleagues. Like running a recruiting business, I don't need an IT guy. I don't need an accountant. It's very simple. I can just outsource it and I could create my own website. It's not like, hey, I'm going to create Salesforce and I have to have like 50 engineers. It's a different business model. It's very entrepreneurial. It's very low cost. So as a top biller, if you have genuinely stupid not to start your own agency, right? Or you just do not have the money or the confidence or the capability, or you're making so much money in someone else's model that it doesn't make sense to reinvent the wheel. That was not the case for me. I wasn't making enough money at my old firm to dissuade me from setting up my own business, right? So then, and also I have real estate. Real estate was like, like I said, $500,000. Like at that age, I was like, wow, I could do anything I want. I could be an actress. I could go and become a YouTube star. I could do anything because I don't have to work anymore, right? Like I'm literally financially free. So at that age, it's like, what do I do? And at the time, it's like real estate is a blessing and a curse because you have tenants and you rely on your tenant to pay the rent. And so when I quit my job, I sold a house that I bought, a condo that I bought, and I made $300,000. I took the whole amount and I did in what's called a 1031. It's an American tax maneuver where you're selling your properties and you're buying new properties. You're not taking any money out. Therefore, you don't owe the government any taxes. Unique to America, this is a tax law. 1031, it's an article in the IRS. And when you, specifically to real estate, when you do this, you cannot take out a single cent. So all that money I made, I cannot take it. I have to reinvest it so that I don't pay any taxes. This is how the government gets you to invest more, right? So at the time, I thought, okay, let me buy 3 homes. So at that point, I had 4 properties. I took one, bought 3. So I have 3 more properties, and I had an extra condo, separate condo that I bought before I quit. So I have 4 properties. And at this time, I'm like becoming a landlord. And you realize very quickly as a landlord that 4 properties earning an average of like $300 to $400 each is not enough to cover the overhead of property ownership. Because if something happens, you have to pay a contractor. The margins are way too low, $300 to $400 off of each property. It sounds good, but the reality is if your tenant doesn't pay, then we have an eviction on our hands. So that's what happened to me. I had a couple evictions that kind of started backing up into each other. So in my dream, I said, oh, I'm fully retired. I don't have to do anything. But in reality, if you invest in real estate, you actually need a high source of personal income to pay for the mistakes that you're inevitably going to face as a landlord. There's going to be issues. So very quickly, after 2 years, and in this time, by the way, I started my own career coaching business, Dandan Global, and I was learning, right? Do I even enjoy coaching people? I do enjoy coaching people, but as a headhunter, I'm used to $30,000 to $50,000 per client, right? Per candidate. Every candidate that I help, I'm making $30,000 to $50,000 to $100,000 off of one candidate. That's how much money I'm making. So when you compare that to individual coaching, and it's like $300 an hour, it's not very exciting because I was doing, 50 to 100K off of one individual. So it's not exciting to me personally. I enjoy sharing my knowledge. I enjoy coaching people. It's just not something that I really think is a good utilization of my talent, right? Like my talent could be much bigger. So I was learning all of this through trial and error. Like I didn't know. I was just going into it. Just let me see. Let me set up a website. Let me start doing coaching. And then so eventually I got to a point where I said, I don't really like the coaching. The real estate is becoming a problem because I'm now negative. I'm in the red. Like I'm actually living off of debt now. I'm revolving debt to stay afloat, taking new money to pay off old money and accumulating interest, which isn't a big deal. Interest isn't a problem. It's just that I need a solution. I need a solution to get very cash flow positive again and at a very high rate. What is a skill that I'm very good at? Recruitment. So that is why I naturally, organically started my recruiting business. It was born out of a need to make money and make a lot of it. And that's the only reason why you should start a recruiting company. You should not be in recruiting if you're just there to have fun. Like recruiting is a serious business. To make money, you have to do a lot of work. So for me, I was like, I'm willing to work hard. I'm willing to invest in my business. And I'm very excited and motivated to be cash positive, to like make money for my clients, make money for me, make money, help my candidates, right? So that was a very natural kind of re-entry into recruitment and owning my own recruitment business. And this time it's my company, not working for somebody else.
Your company, that means you have most of the liability as well as accountability into it. And most of the part that you just said, it sounds like a It sounds like very much an entrepreneurial journey where every founder comes in, gets into real estate or to a point where he or she is trying to get something out of them because they are at a point where there is no money served, the company is dying, or something or the other is happening, and they just have to figure out a solution. And they
Yeah.
eventually figure it out one way or another. It's an interesting journey which you had over these years. I have to ask this question: what are the different domains that you have recruited till now?
Yeah. So I started off doing pharmaceutical recruitment, pharmaceutical centric recruitment. And I was a niche recruiter, a niche headhunter in the space of specifically regulatory writing. So I did that for my first 3 years of my recruitment career. And I dominated that market, created a little monopoly in it from coast to coast. I'm servicing clients anywhere because I knew the market very well. I knew every single player. I knew every single hiring manager. I knew pretty much all the candidates to a point where in that third year, if I met somebody new, I'd say, "Oh, I don't know you. That's a surprise. I know everybody. So who are you?" Like I got to that point in my headhunting career where I basically monopolized the whole market. So I got a little bit bored. My company also wanted me to build new markets. So I experimented with quality assurance a little bit. I did a little bit of safety recruitment, again, all servicing the life sciences, mainly pharmaceuticals, as well as like clinical research organizations, which are essentially like outsourced businesses that still service the pharmaceutical companies, right? So I was mainly servicing these type of customers. And then my last year in recruiting, when I wanted to quit, my company wanted me to come back and they wooed me back by offering me executive search. So executive search, they would give me a chance to lead the effort fully on my own terms, do whatever the heck I want. They'll just let me do whatever I want. And executive search, you're earning off of the highest paid person, which is C-level or VP level. And these people, they're making on the lowest end 250, and even that isn't very good. We're looking at $300,000 to $400,000 being their salary. So each deal you get 25% to 35%. Since I was just starting out the executive search business on my own, I was like, I'm very happy with 25%. So I'll offer 25% on 300 to 400K salaries. So my average deal size was anywhere from like really the 90 to 100 range. And I only did that for about a year and a half before I had enough of that. I was like, I proved to myself I can do it and I don't really need to do this anymore because the more money I make for my company, the more they take. And I kind of didn't want to make money for anyone else anymore. So I kind of just said goodbye to pharmaceutical recruitment. I enjoyed my time recruiting for pharmaceutical and life sciences businesses, but when it came time to set up my own recruiting business, I wanted to focus on a market that I personally am very passionate about. And ironically, that's recruiting for recruitment company and recruiting for top headhunters. So now I recruit for me back in the day. That's my customer now. I recruit for top headhunters now, and I only service them. And I help them in the time where I didn't have any guidance. I now serve as that mentor for them in that moment in time where they need help to make a career decision, but they don't know who to go to because our industry is so niche. I mean, their parents don't really know it, their friends don't really know it. So we are a specialist recruitment business that only helps other headhunters on the agency side, recruiters on the agency side, which is a very niche line of work. And that's what I do now. So all in all, I've covered like, 3 to 4 markets, and this is my final market. I probably won't be setting up any new markets anytime soon.
In a very different niche because right now this niche is not being captured by most of the people, and I believe that this niche is not being looked back by most of the recruiters or headhunters because what happens is when a candidate comes, he goes into a portal or any other reference by this point that he directly gets a job. I believe so. This is basically for C-level executives or any higher level executives who are trying to get a job or trying to switch into a different role. Is that what this niche is all
No,
about?
no, no. So I recruit for recruitment businesses, just like the one I used to work at, a recruitment company.
Okay.
So recruitment company is my customer, is my client. They're paying my fees. I go and I find top billers who work at recruitment agencies. They're top billers. So they could be 2 years in, they could be 1 year in. They're a top performer. Like they sell a lot. They make a lot of money for their organization. Again, like the vision is I'm recruiting for myself, right? Like I used to work at a large recruiting company. That's my customer now. I go and find the Dandans at these recruiting firms and I take them and I move them to my clients, which are smaller recruiting businesses that are not bureaucratic, that are not these college grind shops. So it's a very niche market where a lot of recruiters try to do what I do and they do what I do, but they don't understand because they are not me. They have not worked at a large recruiting business themselves. They have never really experienced that life fully. They don't understand it fully. So I understand it fully because I operate a recruiting business. I used to work at a recruiting business. Like I am a genuine, like full on headhunter. I've been there. I've seen it all. I know exactly what they're going through in their careers. So when they come to me, I know exactly the pain points and the issues and the correct career guidance to give them. Whereas a lot of people, they try to do what I do and they have this service and they tend to just service HR people at the end of the day, which is a different market. Like we're not HR people. They don't really understand, my competitors don't really understand what real top billers experience because they themselves have never been global top billers at a big company. So they don't really know what that life is like. And our industry is so niche that it really takes one to know one and to give them the proper career guidance because it's not like other careers, right? At other careers, it's like climb up the food chain. Our job is very entrepreneurial. So there is really no food chain. There's no like corporate ladder. There really isn't the same career guidance that you would get in a typical job. So I think that's kind of where I differentiate myself. And it's a very unique business, recruiting for recruitment businesses specifically. And now obviously my candidates, some will do what I used to do. They service the pharmaceutical industry, or some of them service the technology sector, or some of them service energy sector. Some of them do banking. So in the recruitment sector, they cover all these different markets because every recruiter is niche. So like I only did pharma. That's it. Like I don't also call up technology firms. No, like that's not my customer. So every recruiter, most of them, the good ones at least, they are niche, they're focused, they're hyper focused, and their goal is to dominate a specific career vertical. So like I explained to you, my first 3 years, I was only doing regulatory writers. I was not placing biostatisticians. I was not placing clinical trial managers. I was not working with CRAs, clinical research associates. I was only dealing with regulatory writers. So they're junior regulatory writer to the department head, director of medical writing. That's how recruitment works, is that you kind of pick a lane and you specialize in it. And then you become the headhunter of that space, leading to a monopoly where you own all of the customers. This is when you make the most money as a top biller because you are the go-to funnel. Like everyone has to work through you because you now own the entire candidate network. So the vision is if you are a company and you're trying to hire, you will not see a single regulatory writer until you call me. And then I will give you the candidates available because that's the power of a headhunter. A headhunter can lock down candidate networks to loyalty through service, through relationships. The candidates and the headhunters kind of work together in a symbiotic relationship.
Is a new process that I am going through because your process is niched down that much that I am hearing it and I am experiencing it for the first time. I've heard about headhunters, I've read about them, especially for this podcast. I was trying to prepare what a headhunter does, what is a daily job of a headhunter, but you really nailed it because I believe that you have your experience as well as you were a headhunter. That is why you already know what a headhunter might go through and you might help them in the journey clearly. I read a quote from Naval Ravikant. He says that to write a good book, you have to become the book. So that is why you were a headhunter before. That is why you now understand the entire journey of a headhunter. I believe so. That is why you can build a company, help them,
Yep.
as well as become the center part of the entire industry and facilitate them the right candidates. You
Yep.
are nailing it,
Thank
Dandan.
you.
You are nailing it. What is
Thank
the
you.
hardest part about recruiting till now you have ever experienced?
I think for recruiting, everybody has different challenges. Some people are more predisposed to success in recruiting due to their life experiences. So for me, I actually didn't find recruiting difficult, at all. And a lot of people take a long time to really learn it and they really struggle. I really didn't have that problem because I'm very motivated and also very people oriented. And I worked a lot. So I worked in the restaurant business. I was a bartender, right? So being a bartender, you have to make conversations with complete strangers and you have to get them to like you because you're trying to earn your tips off of the relationship. At the same time, you don't want them to have any misconceptions about who you are and the relationship boundaries. So it's a fine line. And what I did was I always try to be very business with the customers, where I'd be very friendly to them, but they never kind of cross that boundary, especially as a woman, right? They know they cannot mess with me. And so I think that carried very nicely into recruitment, where I'm very friendly, I'm very engaging, I'm very curious, naturally curious, because as a bartender, you're naturally curious. Like, what do you do for a living? Why are you coming to my bar every single day? Like, what's your life story? Because you need to memorize the customer. So the next time you see them, they're not like, oh, you don't remember my name, right? Like, you have to, these are life skills that I had by the time I started recruiting. So a lot of my colleagues is a high failure rate, very high failure rate. 80% of recruiters don't make it, don't stay. They don't like sales. They don't like the customer service orientation. And also, personally, my parents are very tough, Asian parenting methods. They're very verbally abusive to me. Like my whole life growing up, it's like, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. Blah, blah, blah. So when a customer is being rude to me, I don't care. I don't care because I know, hey man, I'm here for the money, man. You can be as rude as you want to me, bro. I'm here to make money off of you. So I will do whatever it takes. Like, I'll take your crap. Like, that's no big deal, right? Like, a lot of people would cry at work, literally, like, get upset. And I never felt upset. I'm like, these people, they're just like, we're here to make money off of them. Like, why are you getting upset? So I think recruiting, those are the difficult parts of recruiting. It's an emotional roller coaster, and you have to stay very stable, and you have to like focus on your activities and deliver every single day. Like, it's a labor intensive job that only rewards consistency, hard work, reconnecting with people. So you have to be genuinely relationship oriented, and it's hard when someone's just financially motivated, but not relationship oriented. So you kind of have to have both. You have to be very motivated financially, and you have to be very caring emotionally, but not too caring where you start getting hurt and upset and mad and let that get to you. A lot of people quit recruiting because they're like, I'm so sick of this. Oh my God, people so mean to me. And like, I had enough. That candidate lied to me and I just can't do this anymore. Whereas for me, it's just like, this is why we get paid so much money. If it was so simple, then our fees would not be 30 to 100 grand. It would be much cheaper. If this job was any easy, the fees that we would earn would naturally go down because the supply of good recruiters would go up. But the reality is a very difficult job. I think a lot of these qualities, and I don't mean to sound arrogant, this was not hard for me. Like, I was very motivated. I want to be rich. I want to be very wealthy. And that drive is a sincere drive because I didn't come from much. My family moved here with $40 in their pocket. Like, so I grew up always the poorest kid from everywhere else. Again, a big difference. My colleagues, they had money. Their parents have money. They come into work with Chanel watches. It's much better than bartending. It's much better than being a scientist. It's much better than being a doctor. Yet you can make that kind of money. You can make doctor money, right? So I was very dedicated to the career. And again, I do not understand the financial element of this job, how much money you can really make. They don't see the financial value. It's very hard to compare. It's very hard to find a job that can pay this much out of your own personal production, right? Because I tried real estate sales, I tried financial wealth sales, and I was like, these pay like crappy. They pay really crappy. Recruitment is like, whoa, this is like some serious money for a relatively simple like job. It's not that complicated. Like, I don't have to sell someone on giving me $100,000 so that I can invest it into the S&P. That's a very hard sell. It's difficult to sell, difficult to find someone with that ability. I just have to find someone who is a good candidate, who's highly desirable, and monetize that person and get clients to pay me for it, that profile. So I think for me, I noticed very early on, this is a career that rewards hard work. And that was what I was built to do because of my upbringing and also my personal drive to be successful financially.
You were driven financially and you were into this game long before anyone came into this, and also the fact that you were starting really before that bartending business. You were here for communication skill you developed right from the bartending days, and then you carried forward toward your headhunting, and then as you mentioned that real estate is also was one of your niches, and as I believe that real estate is also talking to people, selling to people, you were getting good on that part. So at that point you came
Mm.
into one point that okay, I can now do my own company. I can also build my own company and help people around the world. That is how your career journey transitioned, right?
Yeah. And it's just like I picked a career when I was young because I got into recruiting when I was 22 years old, 23 years old. I picked a career that was naturally aligned to my skill set that I personally decided to pursue. So I made a conscious decision not to listen to society and my parents. And I picked a job and I experimented with it and I gave myself the chance and I took the risk of taking a low base salary so that I would be forced to succeed because I need to live, right? So if I did not take a job that had a low salary and instead went for a risk averse approach, which is let me get an HR job paying $60,000, I would not be able to make $200,000 in an HR job within 3 years. That's not possible. That's not how salaries go, right? Whereas headhunting, because it's a sales job, it allows you to earn a lot of money if you're very talented. So I picked a career making a bet on myself that I would make it. And I chose to live very poorly for the first really 6 months of my life while I was on a very low base salary where I could barely have any money. I had to live very cheaply just to stay afloat. And I built my whole life around the base salary being very low. So I lived in a very cheap place. I ate very little. Like I ate hot dogs, like the cheapest food I could find, just so I could survive and then get successful. And then very quickly it paid off. So the point here that I'm trying to make is that you need to pick a career that you are naturally going to excel at instead of picking a career that you have to work very hard at it to get any good, right? Because again, I came into recruitment with a humongous advantage. Even though I was the same age as everyone else, I had a lot more life and work experience, which would make me successful in connecting with other people. And I worked really, really hard. Like I would work every single day to 9 p.m. Like I would live at the office and I would come in on weekends and I would drive to meet my candidates on weekends. I was doing that. Nobody else was doing that. And maybe they still bill a lot of money. Good for them. But I am not that smart. I can only do it my way, which is working hard. Right. So I'm going out there meeting people, going out to drive like 4 or 5 hours to meet my customers. This is not required. These are all the things I did because I noticed it to help me succeed. So my point is it's like hard work, and certainly it helps if you use your hard work on a job that you're naturally going to succeed at more. Like I was not good at math. So why would I go and try to become a Java developer? It's impossible, right? Like I was terrible at chemistry. It's not possible to go become a doctor. It's not possible to become a scientist because that's a natural weakness. So there's no point, in my view, trying to double down and correct weaknesses when you could be doubling down and maximizing your strength.
Common mistake that every candidate does while getting recruited, while you think that he might be good fit, yet he, this one particular thing or this particular attitude will not take him good. What do you see there? Is there any common traits do you find?
Well, I think a couple of common mistakes that most job seekers or candidates, whether they're working with headhunters or working directly, and obviously this changes with seniority, but overall, I think especially when you're young, it's your attitude matters so much more than your technical skills. So like the software is much more important than the hardware. And as you get more senior, we expect that the hardware is going to be as good as the software, right? Your soft skills matter a lot more than your hard skills. And this is a big mistake that I think a lot of junior people feel, is that they focus too much on selling on this is what I can do versus like building rapport with the interviewer, right? So I think a lot of times people are so busy trying to focus on talking about themselves and focusing on like, this is why I'm good and this is how I can, and that's all great. But never forget that, especially when you start off, the most important thing that you need to do is get hiring managers and HR people to actually like you, right? Like
Ah,
likability is the most important factor. Because if you are a college graduate or you're someone coming out of a good school, you have the same skill set as every single other person because you guys are all graduating with the same background, right? Like, oh, I was top in high school. Oh, I was top in college. Everybody's the same, more or less. There's like very little like differentiating other than like, oh, I play this sport or I did that. The biggest difference is how are you connecting with your interviewer? And if your interviewer likes you, they will naturally, this is called bias, right? And it can work for you, it can hurt you, but the reality is that it is this, right? Because people talk about unconscious bias. Hiring managers tend to pick people who they like. And that sucks. And I agree, it's not ideal, but that is what people do because people are humans and that's what they do. So knowing that, I try to appeal and play that game and play to that, right? So, for instance, when I was looking for an internship as a junior in college, my grades are very average. Experience is very normal. It's nothing special. But how did I get the job? I literally sucked up to the hiring manager. And I was like, oh, you are, I was like, yeah, I'm in like the drama club. She's like, drama club? I'm in the drama club. I don't even really like the drama club. But obviously, I'm like, I love the drama club. This is so great. Blah, 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 blah. Oh, drama, 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 drama. So like that made a big difference. That's probably the reason why she hired me. Because like skill set wise, I'm awful, pretty awful. And I was a terrible intern, terrible. Like I didn't even do the job well. It was a very simple job and I was not interested. And she probably regretted hiring me. But that's the point, right? That's one lesson that I learned very early on is like, this is how you get the job. You suck up to the workers there. And if they like you, they'll naturally say, whoa, let's bring them on because we like them. That is what people really want to look for in a hire is I want to go to work happy and excited to see this person. And they're using that to get ahead. And that's kind of like the modern way is to leverage what you can to get ahead. So, and then the last thing I wanted to say on that is like follow up, diligence, manners. Manners go a long way, especially with senior people. Like as you get more senior, people also want to make sure you're capable. But so you're capable, your capability, your skills, your hardware need to be very strong, right? Like we're assuming that this person is a capable worker. And again, the same advice applies where you have to get every single person interested in you to help you. And you need to be a little bit more self advocating. That's something you don't have when you're more junior. When you're more junior, you don't have the luxury to be like, service me, give me everything I'm worth. I deserve this and that. Because you're junior, you have very little to bring to the table. You're still establishing your track record. When you get a little bit senior, you have some leverage because now you have some market knowledge. Now you have some technical skill, actual hard experience. At that point, you need to be networking more. You need to be understanding your career a little bit more, making more connections with people, and still working on the soft skills of what you can do to be a more genuine, likable, relatable person, because that's still a very important skill set that will help you as you progress in your career.
meaning that you have to build relationship with people as well as take up the part where it sucks, but you have to take up it and move up the ladder so that it happens eventually that you go from junior position to senior position and you will get more responsibilities at that point. Wonderful, wonderful. Every candidate should do this at the start. It sucks, but you have to suck it up and then go up on the food chain. Do you prefer teamwork versus solo run or
Well, in my line of work, because I am a direct hire headhunter where it's best to do both ends of the deal, I personally prefer to work individually. And that's what I've always done. I've always worked by myself. from age 23, right? I'm responsible for my own clients. I'm responsible for my own candidates. Nobody is helping me do anything. So I enjoy that. I enjoy the speed because I can control my behavior and I am very fast. So it's easy for me to do it instead of relying on somebody else to be like, can you reach out to the candidate today? Like, it's easier for me to just be like, hey, what's up? And hop on a phone, get the work done. I personally enjoy managing my own desk alone with relatively little support, no support.
Okay. So you prefer to work alone as well as you prefer to work with teams, right?
No, I prefer to work alone.
For example, if a candidate tells that Dandan, I like to work alone, I don't like to work with teams. So is that what you tell the candidate? Okay,
That's
you can work.
for candidates. For candidates, it's impossible to not work with teams because you're not an entrepreneur, right? Like if you are working at a company, you have to work with people. That is the whole point. And that's why all of my advice is if you are a worker, you have to be likable. You need to because you're working with people. And if they don't like you, you will be fired. That is how it works. You will be fired. You will have a difficult life. You will not enjoy work if you do not enjoy dealing with people. And so everybody has to, unless you're independently wealthy where you don't need a job, if you need a job, you have to learn how to get along with people until you are in a position in which you can become an independent contractor, which a lot of people do, right? A lot of people, they're like programmers at a big company. And at a certain point in their career, they're like, I'm going to charge hourly and I'm going to leave my organization and be a LLC, limited liability corporation. And I'm just going to sell my labor hours hourly to a business and I invoice them for the amount of time I've worked. So this is very popular. Like as people get more experience, the options then open up for them. They don't have to stay in a 9 to 5 if they don't want to, because they actually have the hardware, the hard skills that are very valuable on the open market. And they can get paid from companies directly on a contractual basis, on an hourly, temporary basis. Right. So there's two types of workers. You have full-time workers and you have temp workers. There's two different types of people. So if you are a full-time worker, absolutely, you have to live to your manager's delight. There's an element of politics in working as a professional. People have to like you. If they do not like you, they will not collaborate with you well. You will be arguing and you will have issues getting the work done. So I think like from a candidate advice perspective, if you are not running your own contract business, you're not an entrepreneur, you're working in an organization, you have no choice but to learn to get along with people.
Candidates should learn to go along people, but an entrepreneur always works alone. Yeah, I get it.
No. It depends on what business you're in, right? If you're an entrepreneur and you own a factory, you have to manage staff because you can't run a factory without staff. Some line of work, you need a team. You need workers, like a restaurant. Like if you're owning a restaurant, you have to have chefs. You have to have waiters and waitresses. You need to do that. Whereas I don't. I don't need chefs. This is not the business. So again, it depends on what business you're in and what role you have to provide and what role you have to do. But if you are a worker at a company, you have that is the point, that is the first and mistake that most candidates don't do. They don't understand is that likability trumps everything. It's such an important part of a person's career and their progression within a certain field.
Okay, there are a lot of things that you just gave out on so that everyone should listen to you, because the one point that you mentioned everywhere is likability. Likability is one factor which everyone should focus on. Otherwise, they don't have a business, they don't have a career, and they cannot move ahead on the food chain, as you mentioned before. Great point. And one more thing is that I have seen most of my colleagues that telling that, man, I don't know how to negotiate a salary. Can you just iterate the best part, giving one line advice to have a best negotiation of a salary?
There is no best line. The only strategy to get a high salary is to get as many companies fighting for you as possible and to leverage them against each other. Because certain firms, they just will not pay more than X dollars for your skill set. You can push back, you can try, you can ask. So learning about negotiation, it's what can you do from an offer perspective to match those expectations? What can be achieved? What about this? What about that? So knowing the different components of compensation and how they interact is critical as well. So for instance, health insurance, right? Like knowledge. So, okay, you're offering me X salary, but you're not covering the health insurance. Other companies are covering my health insurance costs. So that cost is a net X dollars. And then giving them the laundry list of like, okay, for all these reasons, I'm very interested in the organization, but to be fair, to compensate for all these other things that I'm not getting, what can be done on your end? And what is the best offer that you can provide that would kind of take into consideration all of these other areas that I'm missing out on. So for every person and for every negotiation, it will be different. For some people, it's, I don't get to work from home. I want to work from home. That's what I'm going to negotiate on. Some people, it's just financial. I need to get this salary up. Some people, it's, I want stocks, I want options, I want shares. That's a different negotiation. So negotiation is not just give me more, I want more, give it more, right? It's understanding what are the different components of what the market is yielding, what the market average rates are. How do I fit into this whole spectrum? It's about self-awareness. Are you a grade A candidate? Do you deserve grade A salaries? Or are you losing the offer because you are a C tier candidate who has now gotten a B tier offer, and now you want to negotiate your B tier offer to an A tier offer when you're a C candidate? You need to know where to stop, right? So it's a little bit of self-awareness. You need to understand, who am I? And does that give me the leg to stand on to ask for more, right? So this is what I mean. Like if you're a college student and you got a job at Microsoft, you don't want to lose the offer by pushing them, displaying mistakes during the negotiation process. You should still ask. Best practices, you should absolutely ask, just for peace of mind, knowing that you challenged yourself to at least ask. So that's fine. But it's about the way that you do it. It's about how you do it. It's not just like, I want more. Google's offering more. They're like, well, freaking take Google then. And then you lose everything. So you see, so it's just like the attitude. It's like saying, hey, Microsoft, I really am excited. It's perfect. However, I do have this concern. What can you do to work with me on this concern? It's a collaborative you and me versus you versus me. And again, it's about getting on the same level. A lot of times a worker will feel, I'm a worker, but you're a boss. That is not really helpful to negotiating. You need to be on the same playing field. I'm a worker, I have equal rights. You're a boss, you want me. We need to be on the same level of communication style. We need to work together, not me talking down to mom, can I have an extra candy bar today? Gotta level it up. You have to have the confidence to level it up. And this is very difficult for young people and for minorities. I experienced this because I grew up in a top-down environment. Parent, child, big gap. What you realize, everyone's equal. So it's a big adjustment because I have to learn to treat my bosses as my peers almost. We have to be on that name to name basis, not uncle, not auntie, right? We are equal. In the workplace, we have to respect each other mutually. And that's a hard adjustment. And negotiations is part of that, right? Is to say, hey, I deserve X. I would like X. How can we get there for me and you, right? Versus saying, please, can I have this? Can I please, right? Like that doesn't work. So I think it's about learning. It's about trying. It's about practicing. And if you get it or not, it doesn't really matter because you can work there for 1 to 2 years and then do it again. You can move, right? In today's world, nobody is working for someone for 10 years. Right? In today's world, this 2 to 3 years is super solid.
Meaning that you should be aware about your own self-worth first. Second, you should be able to speak in terms of quality, because you should be able to put numbers on the table and being able to tell that I did this, I did that, and showcase it on your resume. And the third thing is that you should be able to tell whether you are on the right page and at the right same level with the executives as well. At least on the same level with the other people, so that it will be helpful for you to understand and negotiate the salary. Interesting point. I guess that you might be.
Yes.
Have you come across some other individuals or candidates who were not on the same level yet cracked a great job or got a great salary out of that?
Sure, sure. There are people that get different salaries and different packages, but the difference is that are they in the best place for them ultimately? And the question, we don't pay above market salaries at a lot of the firms that I represent because in our business, good firms don't overpay on base salary. There could be some actual problem. It could be a more difficult place to work because there's a way that the market regulates itself. Good places to work offer average salaries. They're not going to overpay people because the demand for working at that company is at a healthy level. So if you look at some very good companies, they actually will pay medium or slightly under medium because they're like, we have a lot of benefits. We are a very good company to work for. And everyone here, we are very reasonable and we're not asking for big salaries because we're egotistical and we need these ridiculous above market ranges. And so those organizations tend to be also very good places to work at. But some firms, they're known to be very difficult places to work, very tough environments, very difficult people work there. And so there's a market premium to work in those organizations because people kind of know. Like the workers know, they have heard about it. And so they'll take that job only because the salary is high. And they're like, oh, you know what? I understand. I'm just going to work here because it's going to be hell. I know that. But at least I'll get a higher salary. I'll deal with it. Maybe 2, 3 years, I'll leave as well. So I don't think there is a very clear kind of cause and effect between like salary and what that means. There are always going to be people taking advantage of the system. And there are people that are not qualified and they get paid a lot of money. But sooner or later, the clothes on the emperor, they come off, right? It's that whole analogy. Sooner or later, the market realizes at a certain point, this person really is not capable and their career will take a bit of a tumble at that point. Unfortunate. Some people are lucky where they can get away and get by never getting found out. And some people, unfortunately, get found out. And it's very hard for them to adjust to coming to terms with the fact that they're being overpaid. They're really not that skilled. They can't really carry out the mission. So, yeah, unfortunately, not everyone's going to be great just because they have a high salary. It doesn't really mean they're amazing. Some people also got there by playing some games, being right place, right time, being politically aligned. That's the reality of the workforce. It's not always directly reflective of your skill set.
Means you sometimes it happens due to different other factors such as politics. Sometimes it happens the factors are out of your control and it happens that your salary doesn't get negotiated correctly. I have my friends who come along with me ask me this exact question. Man, I don't have a great amount of package. I need to have a next level package. I'm unsure how to go through that process. So I'll definitely recommend them to check out this podcast, also your podcast as well, that where you are deciphering everything about headhunting and telling the process exactly how the headhunting process works for every other recruiter, because there are multiple friends and colleagues who are applying for the job and also for searching for the candidate, so both of them can get help from you. Also, you mentioned your profile was writing around books. Can you just tell what your book is all about and where is it available?
Yeah, I have a book coming out about recruitment as on the agency side. So that is going to be best if you follow my email list on dandanzhu.com, dandanzhu.com. So that's where you're going to get all the updates, more information about the free advice I have. I have a blog on my website. So again, if you go to dandanzhu.com, you'll be able to follow me on all the different platforms. I'm on everything: Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I do hourly coaching, but it's usually for people that are at a more senior level. At the same time, you can check out my free podcast, my free online postings. There's a lot on Quora. I post a lot there. And then also on my podcast, DG Recruit, as well as Daily Dandan. So those are two free podcasts got a ton of free advice. Daily Dandan is more so for the general public. DG Recruit is more so for headhunters, agency recruiters, those interested to build their career in recruitment. I also have a course about recruitment called recruiterprep.com, and that is all about learning what recruitment is in more further detail. So I think that's a really good tool that a lot of your listeners can definitely do, because there's a significant portion of interview training in module 3. Module 3 is like all interview training. Like, what do you need to say to people? How do you explain your background? How do you sell yourself? What are the things to expect? So I think that's cross vertical. That is going to be useful to people in every single industry. So recruiterprep.com, that's another area where you can get more interview coaching.
Products, books, courses, and your podcast. You're definitely killing it out there. But can you just give out one good advice, one real advice that every candidate should follow, as well as every HR should look for?
Yeah, I think the advice that I've always told myself is that like hard work is still valuable today, and to enjoy the work that you do. So that's my suggestion to people a lot of times, even when I'm helping recruit them. I always tell them, like, don't do this job if you genuinely don't enjoy it, because it's going to suck. Like, in an ideal world, I really truly wish people would work jobs that they love. I really wish that they could do that, because if they did, they would genuinely contribute more positively to the world. Right? How can you do so well in something you genuinely don't enjoy doing? So I see that a lot happen with recruiting too, where people are just like, oh, I'm going to just keep doing it. And they don't really do well. That's the thing. Like, they don't even do well. They just do it because they're either scared of doing something else, or lazy, too lazy to switch, or they just don't want to put in the effort, which is another cousin of being lazy, right? They just don't really believe. They have a limited mindset and belief. They believe that work is supposed to be drudgery, right? They like, oh, work is work. And I agree, work is work. There's a reason why work is not called vacation. I'm not vacationing when I'm recruiting. There's a difference. But I love my job. I really enjoy it. It brings out the best in me, right? It maximizes my skill set. I can do the most amazing things through this job, and I love it. So ideally, find a job that you like, that pays well, that you're good at, and that does something positive for the world. This is finding your purpose, right? Something that you're good at, that pays well, because you can't really live comfortably if it doesn't pay well. So it has to pay well. It also has to be something you're naturally good at, so you're not struggling every day, right? And then also it does something good for the world. So if you're like a poacher, you go out there, you kill elephants, and you like killing them, you're not doing something good for the world, right? That's not helping the world. You have to do something in a positive way. That also, you can make a lot of money. Those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can have it all. You can find a job that you love, that you're good at, that does something good for the world, that will pay you well. And that is the life mystery. Like, how do you find that job? Right? You have to find that job.
There is so much in this that I have to distill it in one line. Are you aware about this framework of ikigai? Do you know this thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I guess that this is where everything lands down to a job that pays you well, a job that keeps your hobby, and the job that keeps you healthy. These three things that
Yeah.
everyone should be searching for, and eventually they will be able to get their lives in streamlined. Wait, I I honestly believe that this podcast was great for me because, for one good reason, I got the entrepreneurial journey out of you, and I was able to learn so much thing that you don't have to define your niche early on in your life. You can just go on here and there and then move on to your life. That was the greatest thing that I have learned over here. Anything else that you want to add on to this podcast?
No, I think, again, if you want to continue getting the advice, just go on to dandanzoo.com. That's the best way to stay in touch. And I always want to look for good topics. So if there's any other topics that, people want to talk about, they can always submit questions. I'm always posting on LinkedIn. So that's a really great place where I can answer people's questions. I'm very responsive and I genuinely want to create content that's going to help people and be very practical, not like the feel good stuff. I'm not a big fan of like the sound good, but not really practical. So I do think, again, for people that are tuning into this podcast, follow me at dandanzoo.com, but challenge yourself, challenge your beliefs, challenge why you think the way you do. Where does that come from? And a lot of it comes from our upbringing, our childhoods, our parents, our society. It's that's what's so great about really being in America is the flexibility and the ease of change, breaking through class structures, right? It's the easiest to do in a capitalist environment. But my genuine belief is that that's happening globally. But it takes courage. It takes courage to leave your family unit. And I've seen people even in America do that. Like they left their family in their teens because they're like, I don't agree with you. Whether it was religious, whether it was cultural, whether it was bigotry. They just like, I don't agree with you. And they went out on their own. I meet people like that who left like religious cults, for instance. And I'm like, I have so much respect for you, right? Like, and on my own, like I did not have the courage to leave my household, even though I disagreed with my parents all the time and I rebelled against them all the time, right? So I just think like there's so much to be had out there. There's so much amazing opportunity, but you have to free yourself first in order to tap into that because there's so much holding you back that's related to your upbringing. So either you come to terms with that and you live according to other people's values, or you create your own values. But that takes courage. It takes hard work. It's the journey less traveled, but plenty of people have traveled that and they have succeeded. They have made it work and they have gotten there, right? I didn't do it that drastically, but I did. In my 20s, I did take a career that they were not happy about. I did not get married before my 30s. And my whole family, everyone said, you're leftover woman, blah, 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 right? I'm only getting married in my mid 30s. We don't have to follow society standards anymore. You can create your own viewpoint and but you have to carry out. You have to stay, you have to persevere. You have to persevere through it, right? You can't just make a decision and waffle back and forth. So it's a tough journey. To be successful is never easy. And you might see someone else get successful and say, well, they got lucky. Well, it's because they live in America. Well, it's because of this. Well, it's because of that. It's so easy to hate on other people's success. So easy to diminish other people's efforts. But that doesn't help you advance yourself either. Right? So instead of focusing on others, focus on yourself, create a game plan, persevere with it. And to your point, pivot, try new things, do something else, take care of yourself, be financially responsible. I think these are just general good pieces of advice. Like, never blow all your money. Never a good idea. A lot of people blew their money on crypto. Not a good idea. Don't bet the house on crypto, right? Like, you're not in control. You're not in a position where you can afford to experiment to that level, right? So I'm still very risk averse as much as I'm risk taking. I'm like, ooh, I'm only going to take some risks. I will, but I have to be reasonable, right? You can't go off the deep end. So it's just about making mistakes, learning, growing, trying new things, and giving yourself some belief. Give yourself some confidence.
Take risk, but be aware of the risk consequences as well. Your wisdom in one line is take risk, but be sure that you can take care of the consequences as well. What are the social medias people can find you?
I'm on everything. So if you go on my website, dandanzoo.com, it will have all the links and you can follow me on everything. I do a lot of my real estate stuff. I sing sometimes. I do my podcast on my recruitment. So I cover different elements and I'm traveling a lot. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope the content makes you happy. And if you have any questions, please do submit a question through my website. dandanzoo.com is the best way to reach me.
Are you available on LinkedIn as well
Oh,
on
yeah.
your website?
Yeah. Yeah, they can follow me on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I'm very much active on LinkedIn. So if you follow me, you'll see all the updates.
That was a great podcast. Thank you, Dandan, for coming on this podcast and giving us every piece of advice that a headhunter can definitely use, as well as a recruiter or a candidate can definitely find useful. Thank you for being on the podcast. That was a great conversation, wasn't it? She gave her advice on how to negotiate a salary, how to begin your journey, how to switch, how to pivot, how to move ahead in your career even when you don't know anything. And the most important of all, the concept of a ikigai, where your life becomes whole and you definitely find your hobby, which makes you money and keeps you healthy as well. That was a great conversation with Dandan. Hope you found it useful. See you around. That was a great conversation, wasn't it? She gave her advice on how to negotiate a salary, how to begin your journey, how to switch, how to pivot, how to move ahead in your career even when you don't know anything. And the most important of all, the concept of a ikigai, where your life becomes whole and you definitely find your hobby, which makes you money and keeps you healthy as well. That was a great conversation with Dandan. Hope you found it useful. See you around.